All right, looks like we are live. Another edition of This Week in Cassandra. As you can see, John Haddad, your normal host, is not with us this week. He actually took a couple of days off. And if you're wondering to yourself, like he's an evangelist, like doesn't that mean he's like off all the time? Yeah, that's kind of what the job is typically like. But he does actually get vacation sometimes.
Well,
So
just because you travel to all these exotic locations doesn't mean you're actually on vacation. It
the
means
glamorous life of an evangelist, yes.
you're stuck in a dark room with 30 or 40 engineers with pizza. And I've done that in about every city in the country, probably in the world, in a dark room, pizza and beer.
So as you can see, Patrick McFadden, Chief Evangelist, he's with us. And then Adam Hudson from Datascale is also with us. He's our guest this week. We're going to be talking a little bit about data modeling. Adam's been doing a series of blog posts on data modeling, so that should be really interesting. But if you're following along on the Planet Cassandra blog post, there's a couple of the posts in the list there that we want to call out. And the first thing we wanted to talk about is Patrick had a blog post this week about like writing a successful abstract for the Cassandra Summit CFP call for presentations. That's actually coming up. I think the deadline is early next week, like the 1st of June, maybe. Is that right, Patrick?
Yeah, Wednesday, June 1st is the deadline, and so I wrote the blog post because I get a lot of questions over and over, like, oh, I was thinking about it, but I'm not really good at writing abstracts. And so I hope that it helps a few folks with that. I mean, this isn't a contest. If you need help, ask. If you want to show someone like myself or Luke, if you want to show us your abstract before you submit it and say, is this a good one or what else would you add, that's perfectly legal. This is not a contest. But a few points about in that blog that I really feel are important is, being detailed in your abstract. The review committee for the Cassandra Summit is made up of a lot of people. It's MVPs, it's people from community, and it's just people who care about what's happening with Apache Cassandra. So they're going to read through these abstracts, and there's a lot of them, and we only have so many slots. And if yours doesn't stand out, it has a chance of getting left behind. So that's really what I want you to think about. And if you're on the fence of whether you want to turn in an abstract or talk about something, think about you probably do have a story. And I say this really generally, but it always works out. You look at what you have done, and it is unique. Even though you may have done something that sounds very similar, every implementation is different. And if you think about what you've done, like if Adam, you've been to Summit, you know what it's like in the hallways, right?
Yep.
That conversation, you're really starting a conversation, and you may have some nugget that's really important. So be really detailed, put some detail into your abstract, but really just tell your story. Those are the ones that stand out. The abstract that says we put Cassandra in production and we learned things. That's just, I think I've actually seen that one. Have you seen that one, Luke?
Yeah, I was just like, so you call it out in your blog post. You're like, you quote, "We will talk about how we chose Apache Cassandra." And I was thinking back because I've been on the selection committee now, like the last couple of years running, like kind of helping pick talks. And you'd be surprised how many of those, like kind of like one-liner abstract, like the most general, boring thing, we actually get submitted. And it's kind of frustrating sometimes. Like in particular, like. If like you know of the speaker or like you know the company they work for or something like that, and you're like, hey, like I know they're doing really cool stuff with Cassandra. Like, why did they submit this abstract?
Exactly, but that's something that we can't. I mean, in some cases, because if there's enough people in the speaking committee that know who it is, but you can't count on that, and you really shouldn't. And most times those talks just get rejected. I'm sorry, there's not enough here. If this is your abstract, I don't even want to know what your talk is going to be like. It's going to be that bad. So that's the thing, and you want to think about what would you have want to have seen if you're going to the summit or you go to any conference. What would you like to see? So those are just some general tips, but regardless, no matter what, get it turned in. It's going to be soon. Adam, you got yours in yet?
Working on it.
Working on it. All right, that's what I like to hear. I'm in the same boat. I have not submitted mine yet. I'm trying to. I always wait until the last second because I want to tweak it. But we will probably see a mad rush come in the next few days, and I'm sure we'll all be in there.
Yeah, that's how it always happens. You want to give us a preview, Adam, of what you're thinking about talking about? Or are you keeping it under wraps right now?
No, I can talk about it. So, Datascale, the company that I work for, we're in the Cassandra as a service hosting space. So we do a lot of monitoring of everybody's nodes all at once. So, in the tools that we are using, and currently we've implemented it with Datadog. So that is kind of where I'm going. The things that when people have problems, I'm the point person that gets to help them out, so I get to see a whole bunch of interesting problems. So I'm constantly digging into the metrics and the JMX beans. So that's kind of where I'm going, and we use Datadog.
Awesome.
We're really proud of them.
Have they spoken at a previous summit? I want to say I thought I'd seen a talk from them.
Oh yeah, they are proud and loud Cassandra users. And not only do they monitor Cassandra, they also use Cassandra.
Mm-hmm. So,
very cool.
Yep.
So one other point I wanted to throw out there about the CFP, because I was going back and forth on chat the other day with one of the employees at DataStax who was working on a proposal, but he asked me, about like how serious, like does my talk have to have a paper behind it? Because like CFP, like in a lot of places, is actually call for papers. So how serious does my talk have to be? And I said to him, like just whatever it is, that you do an abstract on, do something that you're passionate about or something that you're super knowledgeable about, and that'll come through in the abstract. And I said you don't at all have to be serious. Like the title of my talk last year at Summit was Relational Scaling and the Temple of Gloom, which was an obvious Indiana Jones reference, and I tried to work in like as many 80s movie references as I could in 40 minutes, which, by the way, you can actually get in 30-plus 80s movie references in one 40-minute talk, in case you're wondering. But yeah, you don't have to be serious. Like some people take the tack of humor. Some people, it absolutely can be serious and can have a paper or something behind it if that's what you're going to submit. But overall, just do something that you're passionate and that that you hopefully are super knowledgeable about, that you think, like Patrick said, other people will want to hear about. That would be my advice if you're putting together your last-minute CFP. So. All right, switching gears a little bit, looking at another one of the blog posts in the list on the Planet Cassandra blog post, if you're following along. So Ryan Spila, who works for DataStax, wrote another excellent blog post. He's kind of we've had him on, actually, on This Week in Cassandra before, and he wrote another excellent blog post about properly testing Cassandra, testing your Cassandra cluster before you get to production, and kind of like what some of that looks like, as far as hardware and what tools maybe you should use to test it, whether you should go homegrown or maybe use Cassandra Stress, just some sort of tips and tricks and a guide for how to properly kind of test things. So I'll open it up to Patrick and Adam. I know you guys both read this post. Any thoughts? Like Adam, like running Cassandra in production, like do you guys do any of this kind of sizing stuff for customers of yours before you guys roll out?
Depends on if they're jumping right in or if they're kind of they're jumping onto us and then slowly growing their data. If they're jumping right in, we want to try to mimic what they're going to do before they do it. So. You never want to get that surprise. Try to push as much data, if not more, than what they're anticipating. So
it's interesting. You see the background here, where I'm sitting in a video studio right now today, and it wasn't because of this particular hangout. It was actually because I'm filming the performance and operation tuning course for Academy, DataStax Academy, and I just did a module on cluster sizing, and it's one of the points that I make in that it's not a hard science. It's somewhat subjective, and it's based on a lot of things like workload and what capacity you have in the nodes you're using. But there's a lot of understanding you need to have. There's not just a formula that you can whip up and that'll be that.
Yeah, I thought especially the stuff about data density, like how much, because we get asked that a lot, like how much data can I fit on a single node, and it was interesting. Like, I haven't spent a ton of time like out there, with people with varied kind of workloads in production. So I didn't realize some of the variability that you could get depending on like compaction strategy, and I always knew that that definitely had a big impact, but just the kind of wide swing between read heavy workloads where you might do a terabyte per node versus write heavy workloads, maybe you can get away with way denser kind of 2-3 terabytes per node kind of thing was super interesting to me.
I think the thing to remember too is if you screw it up, you do have some outs. Like you can add nodes, you can decrease the amount of nodes. Being able to vary during that knob on your cluster size is an option. But what I'd always tell people is make sure you have that option. I think that's where you guys work there, Adam. Isn't that right? The old knob for cluster sizing.
We do a lot of that.
Yeah.
We've got it all built into the UI, and spin them up, tear them down.
Man.
All automated.
Yeah, and how many?
You get a slider or something, really slick in the UI where you just slide it up and down.
Yeah, I don't think we're that fancy yet, but maybe a drop down.
Yeah, drop downs work too. Well, you think of like traditional database problems where you buy that big server, and you hope that that's enough. Because if it isn't, yeah.
Yep. EBS is your friend nowadays.
Yeah, it's true.
We use EBS a lot to get out of situations. So
the magical sizing button.
It is. Add more.
That's right.
So just one thing that Ryan mentions in this blog post, which kind of segues, I guess, a little bit into Adam and what you've been writing about recently. So he talks a little bit about, one thing that he sees all the time in people that have problems in production is data models that are sometimes he says data models that are sometimes naively lifted one for one from Oracle data models. That weren't scaling, and they expect to pick that data model up and move it over to Cassandra, and then all of a sudden, they get this magic scaling fairy dust sprinkled on it because Cassandra is so awesome, and it'll all just work, like it'll all be magically happy, and that is definitely not a recipe for success with Cassandra. And Adam, you've been talking a little bit about kind of what it takes to make that transition, or some of the process you go through as far as data modeling with Cassandra goes.
There's definitely a lot of that relational stuff that comes to mind when you look at it, but you can't just pick up that model and apply it. So adding that extra layer of going after your queries first and building your models, knowing your entities is super important. Thinking back from we've all got that DBA background, at least most of us do, and how to normalize things and bring things up to the 3rd, 4th, 5th degrees of normalization. Those are great and all, but then turning those things into real queries that are actually going to be efficient. Putting them, and I do a lot of professional services in my position, so I get to go in and see, hey, our data model's not quite working out. We're not performing very well. Well, let's see. Oh, yeah, look at how wide rows you've implemented here because of X, Y, Z. We're just trying to go in and figure out exactly what the data model is that they're trying to achieve, and knowing where they came from, whether it be MySQL or some other relational that they've adopted Cassandra to jump right in. So I think data modeling really there's a lot of meat on the bone there for to write about and talk about data modeling. Probably a good CFP topic now that I think about it. But yeah, we decided to do a series. You've done a few of them, Patrick. I've learned a lot from you.
I'll do another one.
Yeah. So taking the DS220 course, I think it is. They go through the great conceptual, logical, and then physical data model. So I've kind of mimicked that a little bit in what people expect, because really that is a great way to go through it. Figure out what it is that your application is trying to achieve first, and knowing what those entities look like and what those relationships work out. Otherwise, you might get yourself into a situation where it's just not going to scale because your data just doesn't do something that you anticipated it to do later down the road.
So for somebody who's listening to this who doesn't know like what you're talking about when you say logical, physical, conceptual, like could you break down just kind of real quick, like that you've done two parts in this
I have.
series so far, and I think you did the logical and the conceptual data model, but you haven't done the physical yet. But I'm sure
Correct.
that'll be on This Week in Cassandra next week or in the next few weeks. So
I'm trying to get them out once a week.
yeah.
So,
So explain to somebody who's kind of listening and doesn't know what you're talking about what those three different kind of data models mean.
all right. So let's see. You start with your conceptual. In conceptual, you're just trying to define what an entity is. And I talk about whether an entity could be like a noun, basically. What would that be? A person. Some kind of thing. A client, employee, whatnot. And then you think through, well, that conceptual is going to have certain attributes, characteristics. So a person may have name and age and gender, things like that. Then you put it into, once you've built those relationships, and a person may have a relationship with another person, whether that be via genealogy or some other marriage or something like that. What you do is you build that into a logical. So you take that and you start to put it into what you would think of as a table form. So you're starting to build, oh, well, now I've got a person table, and we're starting to link the idea of an entity to a table, and now all of our attributes are becoming columns. And then that's where the logical is, but you don't want to leave it just at that, because you want to add the Cassandra part to it, which is you want to think of it in queries. So if you're coming from that DBA world, you want to think of it like, what are the views that I use a lot? Where you have a whole bunch of joins together in the relational world, because you're not going to have any of those joined. You want to put all that data all on one row. So that's where you're starting to put it into logical form. And then we'll talk about the physical afterwards, which physical is we're into what does it look like on disk? How does it perform? How does it how are we seeking it on the nodes? And that kind of stuff. So we're actually going to get more specific about Cassandra.
Yeah, things like maybe data locality, like how do I pick a partition key so that I'm hitting as few nodes as possible.
Yes.
How does it look on disk? Clustering Absolutely. Keys. Yep, makes total sense. Yeah, Patrick and I know, like Patrick, every Cassandra day we've ever done, you always give the data modeling talk, and we tend to give sort of a condensed version of that when we when we do those Cassandra day talks, or you do, since you do the data modeling talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really just kind of breaking through that barrier. I think most of and I do this raise a hands thing where I'm like, how many of you have done relational data modeling? And it's like 100%. So okay, we can all start from there, and that hour talk, or I do 2 talks usually at Cassandra days, but a couple hours is not enough. But it really does start opening doors, and that's all you can really hope for. Like Adam said, breaking through okay, this isn't so scary, but this is the difference, and it will help developers work through the path that they're going to take. And I would hope that if they really want to get, and I tell people this all the time, if you're getting paid to do this, then you should do this. You should go to Academy and take the data modeling course there, because you need to cover all the bases. You need to be a professional and understand all the parts.
Adam, I'm curious, with your consulting work that you guys do for clients, like how much of that work is related to data modeling, and how many of the problems that maybe you get called in to fix, or that you end up fixing, are related to data modeling?
It's the lion's share. So the majority of what we do, or what I go out and do, is fixing their data model, or trying to looking at their data is one thing, and you can kind of understand it, but stopping and asking them, what are you trying to do? And then going, okay, now this is really not how you want to approach that, because you're doing this, and you're looking at too many nodes here. That's why you're kind of hitting a bottleneck, and you can't do this, or you really need to trying to use one table for too many things. Like no. Duplicate as much data as you want. That's the key. You want to spread the same data out all over the place, just to make those queries so much faster. So the majority of what we do is going out and doing data modeling.
All right, so I think we're coming up on close to time. It's been, I don't know, a little over 20 minutes. So we'll probably wrap this up at this point. Adam, you got anything else you want to like shout out about Datascale or,
Go out, check us out. We're at datascale.io. Putting out new blogs every week. We're trying to grab new followers on Twitter, so at Datascale Inc. And follow me. I'm out there too. At Adam Hudson.
Awesome. Okay, so before we go, call out a couple of quick things. So we got, as usual, a list of job openings. So if you're interested or looking for, interested in a new gig or looking for work, right now there are multiple job openings posted on the blog post here on Planet Cassandra. A couple in particular, Sony has a couple of openings right now on two of their PlayStation teams. So kind of cool. One's a management, sort of like an engineering management position, and one is like a senior engineering position. And then also Choice Hotels, they have a senior Cassandra DBA position open as well. So if you're a DBA out there looking for work, definitely check that out as well. And then lastly, CFP, like we mentioned at the beginning of This Week in Cassandra, we're coming up on the CFP deadline. Patrick?
Yeah.
CFP's in?
Yeah, right away.
Papers in?
Let's do that. Right after this, let's do that.
And that means the three of us too, because I haven't done mine yet either.
Yeah,
I don't think any of the three of us have submitted yet. So.
We'll do that. Yeah.
So we're on it, but by next Wednesday. Remember, the deadline is coming up soon. So with that, we will say goodbye. Thanks for joining us, Adam and Patrick, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right.
See you.